Hello and welcome to Absolute Trust Talk. This is our live version of our podcast here at Absolute Trust Counsel. I am Kirsten Howe, I'm the host. And today we are going to be talking about wealth transitions. We've all heard the old adage, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. And sadly, for many families, the transfer of wealth from one generation to the next doesn't always go smoothly. This is true for very wealthy families, and it's also true for not so wealthy families. It applies kind of across the board, and that is sad, and it doesn't have to be that way. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to Richard Del Monte of the Del Monte Group about the underlying reasons why wealth transfers often do go badly, and the tools that he uses and recommends for families to use to not be one of those casualties. I'm going to introduce Richard officially in just a minute, but first, if you're a regular viewer, you know I have to get some housekeeping out of the way. So we are, number one is we are recording this live episode, and so if you wanted to watch it again or you have a friend who needs to watch it, it will be a video available on our website in a few days, and it's also being made into a podcast, which is just audio, so that also will be on our website in a few days as a podcast. And also you can always listen to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Just go into the podcast app and search for Absolute Trust Talk, or you can search for my name, Kirsten Howe, you'll find us. So just give us a few days for that, and tell all your friends. The second thing is this is live, and so we do take questions at the end. Richard and I will talk for a little bit, and then I will open it up for questions from our audience. If you have a question and you're watching us live on Facebook, go ahead and type it into the comment section, and we'll see it and we will read it at the end. If you are not watching live, you're listening to the recording, I can't help you, but we are always here to answer questions, so you can certainly reach out to either Richard or myself afterwards. Okay, enough of that. Now, my guest, Richard Del Monte of the Del Monte Group, is a certified financial planner and a certified wealth consultant. He is nationally recognized as an expert on families and wealth. Richard, he's got so much exposure in the media. He's been featured on Fox Business News, in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Private Opportunities Club, Private Wealth Magazine, Trusts and Estates, and Family Wealth Report, and I'm sure there are many more that he didn't bother to mention to me. He's also an author. His book, Endless Inheritance, Moving from Feuding to Flourishing in Your Affluent Family. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. And he's a much sought after speaker. He recently gave a TEDx Bellevue talk on a place of possibility for families and wealth. Richard has spent over 35 years counseling individuals, families, and closely held business owners, providing them with innovative and creative ways to keep, grow, and enjoy their wealth. That's a very important word, enjoy. He excels in guiding clients through challenging life transitions and finding ways to make seemingly out of reach financial goals become reality. And that's what a good financial advisor should do. If you want to get to yes, Richard is your man. Richard has an MBA in financial planning from Golden Gate University here in San Francisco, and a BS in business administration from Cal State Chico. He's been a faculty member at the Institute for Preparing Heirs, a student of Bowen Family Systems, and a founding member of the Counsel for Shared Leadership, LLC, which established standards of excellence for values-based advisors and the families they served. It's a very, very impressive CV. We are so lucky to have a few minutes of Richard's time today because he's in very high demand. Thank you, Richard. I'm so glad that you're here today.
Thank you, Kirsten. I really appreciate this opportunity to be with you.
Good. Yeah. Well, it'll be fun. I hope.
So,
Richard, you've been a financial advisor for many years, and you really have developed a reputation for and a specialty of working with families to ensure that the transfer of wealth from parent to child is successful. And as we know, those transfers don't always go well. So maybe we could start by just giving us an idea of the magnitude of this problem. How often do these generational wealth transfers fail?
Sure. Yeah. That's a great question, because it's funny that it's so prevalent, but most people aren't even aware of it. You mentioned the shirt sleeves proverb, and that's something that's not just, an American thing. It's global. In Ireland, it's clogs to clogs in 3 generations, and in Asia, it's rice paddy to rice paddy. I'm serious.
They have
it's a human
their adage, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a human condition, and it speaks to how what happens is when wealth is transferred from one generation to the next, 70% of the time, the next generation loses all the wealth by the end of their lifetime. And if you're among the fortunate few 30%, let's say, that are successful in transitioning the wealth, when the second generation transfers it to the next generation, which is the third generation of the family, they lose another 70%. So over 3 generations, there's a 90% loss rate.
Oh my God!
I mean, it's just
That's
devastating.
Astounding. Yeah.
It is. It is.
Wow. So, when we say there's a failed transition, so the failure that you're talking about is the wealth just disappears from the family. It's no longer in the family. I'm guessing that there are other things that perhaps go along with failed transitions, and we could talk about that, family dynamic, personal problems, all of that.
Right.
So I guess that's my question. What do these failures look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. There was a study done, kind of a landmark study in this field, done by some of my mentors, actually, Roy Williams and Vic Pricer, and they followed 2,150 families that failed to maintain their wealth and their family relationships. Over 20 years, they followed them, and they came out. They found out. Well, they asked them, like, what is the reason that your family failed? And the answers were really striking and kind of shocking, because most people would assume, I think, that if you lost all your money, it's probably because there's some kind of a planning error, right? The investment advisor put you in a bad investment, or no offense, but the estate planning attorney forgot to have the document signed or something, something like that. And actually, that study showed that only 3% of the failures had anything to do with a planning error. So basically, you in the estate planning field are doing a great job, but you're not causing any of these things. It's really the 60% of the failures were caused by a lack of communication and trust within the family. Now think about that. That's something, in the financial services world, we never even talk about communication and trust within the family.
Right.
And another 25% of the failures were caused by unprepared heirs. So the kids didn't know what to do after mom and dad are gone, when they inherited the family's, real estate portfolio or the family business or whatever it was. Well, so that's 85% of the failures.
Yeah, which is really quite remarkable when you think about it. These are things that are within, at least in theory, within the family's control. It's not something that the professional did to them. It's not something the IRS did to them. It's these are family issues, is really what you're talking about. Communication, preparation, trust. Those are family issues. Yeah, that's fascinating. And yet here you are, a financial advisor who helps people with those family issues. So let's focus on the first thing. If a family has a communication and trust problem, what do you see? When do they call you? What's causing them to call you? How do you get involved?
I would love to say that they call me because they know what these risks are, and they want to make sure their families don't fall into that trap, into the shirt sleeves proverb. But
right.
alas,
we all love the proactive client, right?
Right. But they are, one in a million, unfortunately. When we typically get called is when the family is in a big blow up. There's a big problem. People are fighting. Siblings won't speak to each other. Parents won't speak to certain siblings. There's a big problem that they just don't know how to work out themselves. And that's when they throw the Hail Mary and want to get a professional involved.
Okay. And so what do you do in that situation? You got the family is in chaos or disharmony, at least, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, the first thing we have to do is try to get them calm and try to understand what's going on. But it's really interesting because when the problems present themselves, they always think, well, we're not getting along about this topic, whatever it may be. But they'll look at that particular issue as if that's the issue. But unfortunately, it's almost like an onion. You have to keep peeling back the layers and get to what's really going on. And every single time I've done this, underlying the whatever the problem at hand is, that problem at hand is just a symptom of the deep-seated problem, which is something that happened in the family years ago. Sometimes it's like, if it's a sibling issue, it could be like, you stole my boyfriend when we were in middle school and I never forgave you, and now I'm going to take it out on you about this particular issue. And so you could solve this particular issue, but you're not getting to the deep-seated problem. And you have to go back and say, okay, let's look at this issue and let's talk about, what's really going on between you two or in this family. Yeah,
we see that a lot, especially after the parents have died. And that's where we see things, so you and I look at it before death as well, but where we, those kinds of issues tend to really present themselves for us is after the parents have died. And that's where you get siblings fighting over, a teapot or some silly thing like that. And it's never about the teapot. It's never even about $100,000.
Nope.
It's about, as you said, some childhood issue that was never addressed adequately. So, okay, so you peel back the onion and you see that there's this issue that somehow needs to be addressed. What's the family going to do next? What do we do?
What we do typically is we have a kind of a 2-day retreat that we put the family through. They'll come and spend like Saturday and Sunday with us, and they'll come in. It's a conflict resolution workshop basically, and so they'll come in and their arms are crossed and they're very upset. They won't speak to each other. Sometimes you can't even get them there. You have to really twist arms to get them there. And we help them. And by the end of the second day, they're leaving and they're crying and hugging and everything else. So it's kind of remarkable. But what you have to do is help people understand that we're all human. These conflicts are part of the human condition. And so we behave a certain way when we're convinced that we're right and other people are wrong.
Right.
And these are things that we do to each other. They're kind of like behaviors that we inflict on other people. And if you actually look at it, we may not be right. We may just be, it might just be our perspective is different from other people in the family. And the second thing we have to do is teach them how to listen. I'm sure you've seen this. Everybody thinks they're great listeners. Oh, I'm a great listener. The average person could not repeat back a paragraph that somebody else said to them if their life depended on it. We are not good listeners,
Right.
And so we listen to refute, or we listen to, to argue with people, try to get our word in and say, this is where you're wrong and all that. That's not listening. People don't feel heard if you're doing that. So what's needed is to be able to teach them to listen, to understand the other person's perspective. And when you can do that, like through active listening, you can actually get to some real life-changing understanding and resolution.
Well, those are really valuable skills, I guess, to acquire the ability to see that there's more than one perspective in every situation, and every failed relationship, there are two people who have responsibility.
Absolutely.
Right? And to help people come to that awareness, that's huge. Mm-hmm. That's really huge. And then, teaching someone to listen, really, not just wait quietly until it's your turn to talk.
Right.
That's
Right.
But we're all terrible at that. You're right.
We are. We are.
all are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously, I'm guessing you have various exercises or you lead conversations that, I mean, it's like mediation in a way.
Kind of, but it's not. It's more like I'd like to call it coaching. Right? People say you're like a psychologist. No, we have psychologists that we bring in for the for these family situations. In fact, I do every meeting I do has a psychologist with me. But my role is more like coaching. Facilitating, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Asking the right questions.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I sometimes wish I had gone down a different path. That appeals to me. I like that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, so now give us the other thing that you mentioned besides communication and trust was the unprepared heirs. Talk about some examples of unprepared heirs and what you've done to change that situation.
Okay. Well, typically, we'll have a conversation like this with maybe the parents or the siblings, and they'll say, "Oh, my kids get along great," and they may get along great as siblings, but once mom and dad are out of the picture, and suddenly one, they're having to be business partners,
right?
Or they have to be, one of them is the trustee and the other ones are the beneficiaries. And there's a power disparity. Oh boy, they have no experience with that. And so all the great things that they might have done, as siblings have no bearing on how they're going to, because this is a whole new complicated relationship. And so if you just thrust them into that, it's like you're asking a football team to perform in the Super Bowl with never having practiced. You're asking for trouble. You've got to teach them. You have to give them experiences while mom and dad are around, ideally, that will give them the same kinds of interactions that they're going to have once mom and dad are gone.
Right.
So that's what we create opportunities for them to have those interactions on a platform that's not going to kill the family if it doesn't work out.
So, okay, so what does that mean? Like, maybe you give them, as siblings, give them a project?
Yeah, exactly. So,
okay.
for example, so like one thing that's really good, I'm sure you've been involved in, is family meetings, right? And so instead of having the parents run the family meeting, the family can decide, well, we're going to have G2, second generation, be in charge of planning the meeting. And so G2 could be 20 years old. They could be 60 years old. I mean, it doesn't really matter. But they're in charge of deciding, where are we going to meet? What's the conversation going to be about? Do we have to, what are the logistics? How are we going to get everybody there? What are we going to do about food? Are we going to have any family fun while we're doing this? All that stuff. And who are we going to bring in as an expert to talk? Like, are we going to bring in our CPA or our estate planning attorney to the meeting? What does the family need to hear or experience so that we can start growing? And putting that responsibility on G2 is real. That's exactly what you're trying to do, is have them step up and take leadership roles in the family. And if they screw up and the meeting doesn't go well, it's not going to kill the family, but they're learning.
Right.
That's one example.
Just trial number one, and try something else. So
exactly.
What else? I'm sure your toolbox is stuffed full of things to try. Because every family is different, right?
Exactly. You have to meet them where they are, and see. We'll actually give them a laundry list of these are the kind of things we could do. What strikes you? What's the low-lying fruit for you that seems like a good opportunity? But one of the ones that's most common, I'm sure you do these all the time. Do you do family estate meetings very often? Like, I'm sure you do, right? To explain what the terms of the trust and what's going to happen. Sure. Yeah. I think that I'm sure you could speak to this, but from my experience, just facilitating that, if a family does nothing else, that is powerful, because mom and dad will be sitting there in front of the children and explaining what they want to have happen. Everybody hears the same thing. This is who's getting mom's hutch. What is it you said, mom's brooch or something? Whatever, this is who's getting it, and they all get to hear it. We actually like to video those, because no one can say, I didn't hear that, And it really it gives everybody the chance to ask the same questions, rather than mom and dad doing the shotgun approach and telling different kids different things, and then causing an issue.
Right. Yeah. That's a good one. That is,
Yeah.
that is a good one.
And
Information is a very helpful thing,
yeah,
and parents who, for whatever reason, don't share that.
right.
You can understand the reasons why they might not want to share, but sometimes it's a more compelling reason to share.
Yeah. That's my position. It's almost always, it is more compelling, but they're afraid to open Pandora's box. There's a lot of concerns they have. What if this goes bad? What if they start arguing? All that kind of stuff. And those are things that are legitimate, but then they put their kids in harm's way with the shirt sleeves parable. So, or proverb.
Right.
So, name your poison. What do you want to have happen?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and the thing about unprepared heirs too, I think that it's not only they're unprepared to work together or they're unprepared to deal with, being in business, which, a big estate, even if it's not including a business, it is a business.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing about the trust business, is that you're mixing family with business.
Right.
And that can be disastrous. But unprepared heirs can also be, people who are just really, maybe they've been enabled. Maybe they've had things too easy.
Yep.
They aren't quite fully launched.
Right.
And so all of this stuff it's almost as though parents who have a lot of wealth in particular, they don't just have the normal parental duties. They have even more.
Exactly.
An even bigger job.
It's complicated for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
What, maybe share a couple more of your
sure.
tools for
Okay.
getting the family up to speed.
Yeah. So we often will create what we call a family bank. And this is an account where the mom and dad will write a check to the siblings. Let's say there's 5 kids, and we'll say, everybody's name is on it. And they give them a check in a meeting and say, okay, your job is to take this money and invest it and come back next year and tell us how you did, to mom and dad. And it's got to be, it's some kind of a meaningful amount of money. I've seen families that are, that are relatively not very affluent that made it with $3,000, and it was a big important thing for these kids. But I've seen other families that have done $50,000, and so it just depends on the family. Yeah. But the kids have to go decide, like, what are we going to do with this money? And the kids want to obviously impress the parents and just really hit it out of the park. But the parents just want to see, can these kids work together at all? And so the kids have to go out and they have to decide, well, what kind of entity are we going to put this in? Who's going to be our advisor? Where are we going to custody this money? What's our investment policy going to be? Who's going to watch this? Who's going to report on it? All those things that, if you think about it, those are exactly the kinds of things that they have to deal with once they actually inherit the money, right? And they've got to cooperate. So if they screw up, who cares? We'll work on the fixing that. But you want to get those out of the way now, and it's super powerful, and it builds a lot of camaraderie and cooperation between the family members.
Yeah, so it's the same kind of idea. Give them a project, but now it's a real, like, it's an investment project,
right? Instead
of just putting together a weekend. Yeah,
exactly.
I like that.
You can also, give them one property. Say you have a bunch of rental properties. Give the kids one property and say, you're in charge of this one.
Now you're the landlord.
Yeah, you're the landlord. You deal with all the issues. Let's talk about what are the capital expenses we're going to do. What about the rents? All those things that you're going to have to do later, but you can cut your teeth on it now. Just anything with family, because there's so many. You can have the kids be in charge of your donor advised fund. How are we going to invest this, and how are we going to decide where the money goes? That's a great example. And you teach the children, to be philanthropically inclined. So there's just so many ways that you can approach it depending on the family.
Right. Yeah. That's fascinating. I had not thought of any of those things.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. I especially like the donor advised fund thing. The kids have to go out and research charities and all the things that you want to know before you give to a charity. And
For sure. You can even start young, like to get we've seen families where we've encouraged them to say, we have $1,000, kids. These are young kids, 5, 6, 7 years old. We have $1,000. The family's going to donate to a charity this year. We want you to go out and do the research and come back, and we're going to have a family council meeting and tell us where you think we should do it. And then however the family decides, like if they want to go to Tony La Russa's ARF, for example, you bring the kids down, you set it up in advance and bring the kids down to there and say, here's the check, show us what you're doing, and the executive director can bring them around and they can get the experience like, wow, this is so powerful what we're doing here. This is way more fun than getting a Maserati, maybe not that bad, but they get to see like it's really impactful.
Yeah,
and they get it at a young age.
Yeah, at a young age, that would really have a lot of impact. To actually see where their money is going and what it gets spent on. It gets spent on dog food,
Right.
Yeah,
it's great.
That's great. Thank you for sharing those.
Sure.
I think we probably should turn to our questions so we don't take too much of your time. So let me just scroll through and capture. Okay, here we go. Okay, so the first question was entered a little bit ago. It's probably before we started talking about this. What can you recommend for parents who want to teach young children to be charitable? And maybe we just covered that.
There's one more though, if you want to do that, I can give you.
Yeah, let's talk.
The grandparent challenge. You can get people want the grandparents, they kind of put them out to pasture, go play golf or go drive around in your RV or something. But bring them into the family and use them as mentors. You know how it is. The kids rarely listen to their parents, but they'll listen to their grandparents. And so because the parents are the common enemy of both of them, right? And so they, and so you can the grandparents can be excellent mentors in the family to help them with that kind of thing. So they're super powerful and you can't forget them.
That's such a good point. Yeah, that just because you're retired doesn't mean that you have nothing to contribute.
Exactly.
It often means the opposite. Yeah.
All that wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what do wealthy parents need to do to make sure their children grow up with a work ethic? That might be a little outside of your realm. No. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that the real issue is to help them understand what feeling empowered feels like, and feeling fulfilled actually feels like, and so give them experiences where they can actually feel fulfillment instead of pleasure. And there's a big difference. Like, like I said, the Maserati versus, helping, do something like, we're the John Muir Health Foundation. I'm on that board, and we actually give the families tours of the hospital, and we show them all the things that their family has done to help the hospital grow. Your family built this wing or this NICU or something, and it's powerful for the kids to see that, because the kids otherwise are experiencing that whole thing as these people are taking my inheritance away, this hospital, and if they go see it and it's like, oh, then they start thinking our family is doing this, and it's a whole different experience. Yeah. So I think that's part of the work ethic, but giving them opportunities to work and feel esteem is really important too.
Yeah. I think that work ethic thing is that's big. I talk to my clients a lot about that. I think that there definitely is a danger of kids who grow up with a lot of money and things were always available and easy, and knowing that they have a lot of money makes it easy to become a dabbler, to pursue this career for a little while, and then when your boss makes you angry, you quit, and then you go pursue, because you don't really have any skin in the game.
Right.
And so again, that's another job for the parent, is making sure that those kinds of attitudes don't develop.
Absolutely. And that's one of the root causes of the shirt sleeves proverb, is exactly what you're saying. Children doing that and not feeling connected to a purpose in their life.
Yeah, I think that's really right. That you really hit the nail on the head. They've got to feel connected to that, and it has to be purposeful. Yeah. Okay, so I got one more question. Oh no, I guess I got two. Yeah. Is there anything you can do if one child just won't participate in the family meetings or retreats? What do you do about that?
That's a great question, Kirsten. The thing that we kind of do, it's a little sneaky and underhanded, I have to say, but we tell them, I hate to give away my techniques, but we tell them, don't worry about it. It's fine. You don't have to attend the meeting. We just want you to know we're going to be talking about your inheritance at that meeting, but don't worry, you don't have to come. And they come, trust me, they'll come. It's a little underhanded, but it does get them there. Once we get them there, they're going to have a great experience. We know that. So
Right.
even if they have beefs and everything, they think that it's going to be what they already have experienced in their family, like miserable and fighting and everything. But when they're actually with a good, skilled facilitator or someone that can teach them things, it's a whole different experience.
Yeah, it's not going to be the same old Thanksgiving dinner where everybody storms off before dessert. Yeah,
Exactly.
because you're gonna make sure that doesn't happen.
Right.
Okay, I've got another one here. What is the first step in implementing something like this with full-grown siblings?
The first thing I could say to families is it's really important it's super helpful if the parents, the older generation is still alive, because they are kind of the velvet hammer that keeps everybody in line. Yeah. Once mom and dad die, it's like trying to herd cats. It's, as you know.
Yeah.
The cohesiveness is gone. So A, try to take advantage of it while the parents are still there. And B, it's really helpful to help the family members understand what this is about, what they're risking, and what they're subject to with them, and then also their children in context with the wealth and what's, fulfillment and purpose and all those things in their lives if they don't take action. And, so if they refuse to do those things, sometimes you can't help everybody,
Yeah.
We work with the willing.
You help the people who are willing to be helped.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. Yeah.
That's right.
So
unfortunately.
That's how life works. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So Richard, now, I got one more question that came in.
Okay.
What age can I start teaching this to my children?
4 years old, the dinner table, you have the dinner table conversations, they listen, and you start talking about, philanthropy is a great way to do it with young people. And, talking about work and purpose and how you just imagine the father and mother sitting there and talking about how much value they get and appreciation they get out of their work or the people they've been helping, and having that just be part of the dinner table conversation. Those kids are absorbing it all. And it's super powerful. So I don't think there's really too young of an age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Honestly.
I would agree with you. Kids pick up so much more than we are aware of. It's and not just like remembering, but they are aware of things that we kind of, we tune out. We're busy. We got to head down. We're working, but they have a lot of awareness.
Yeah.
So they pick up on that stuff. Okay. So now, sure. Richard, as I said in my introduction of you, you are an author, you have a book, and you are going to make that available to our listeners. I want you to just talk a little bit about your book. Okay.
So the book is Endless Inheritance, and it's really a book that can explain the problems that we've talked about, for the last half an hour, what the issues are families face, what happens if they don't fix them. There's a lot of stories in there, stories of people that we've dealt with, because stories are very powerful, of, people that have really suffered really badly, and other people who have done really, good things with it. And there's exercises in there. So it's basically a do-it-yourself book. So if you really want to get involved in this in your own family, you've got lots of things. There's exercises and experiences. We tell you how to run your family meetings and how to, what things to look out for, and how to prepare, the whole thing. You can just take it as a DIY book for people that want to do it themselves.
Okay. All right. And so if you're listening and you are interested in receiving a copy of that book, you can contact us at Absolute Trust Counsel. You can email us, info@absolutetrustcounsel.com. You can call us on the phone and we will get you one of Richard's books. Yep. It's fantastic. It really is, this conversation times 300. It's chock full of
Thank you.
lots of good advice and examples. So I encourage you to do that. Okay, Richard, thank you so much for joining us. I enjoyed this half hour so much. I learned so much, and I really, really appreciate you. I know you're busy, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kirsten. It's been a blast. I really appreciate it.
Good. Okay. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Okay. So, and thank you all for being here today. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope you learned something that is useful to you. If you like our podcast, be sure to go onto iTunes and subscribe. To find our podcast, you just go on the podcast app and type in Absolute Trust Talk, or you can type in my name, Kirsten Howe, in the search bar, and our podcast will appear, and you'll be able to subscribe there. That helps us with visibility online, with SEO, all those kinds of things that I don't really understand, but they tell me it's good. So it helps us. And besides searching for us on iTunes, you can also find all of our previous episodes on our website, absolutetrustcounsel.com. We have lots of other resources there. Just click on the podcast tab on our homepage and you'll see all of our past episodes. And also make sure to catch our next episode, which will be out in a couple of weeks. I hope you'll get a lot out of that one too. And I look forward to connecting with you next time.